reality is the weather's good in the first week of November, and out we go, and then we miss the 1st of December, and then by default we miss about the grass supply on the 1st of February, and then we end up in the month of March. You arrive out the farm in the middle of March, farm cover is low, weather is fabulous, we don't have the grass supply on the farm. There's a famous saying in this game that, the grazing season starts in the autumn, not in the spring.
This week I'm linking in with John Maher for his Grass10 Grazing Management update on the Dairy Edge, as John will be touching on a very important topic in his update that I want to expand further on. August is a very important month in the grazing year, but it is also a period that coincides with holiday time and holiday mood, which can result in people taking the eye off the ball on grazing management, with subsequent consequences that can have impact as far as the next spring. However, before we started the discussion on autumn management, I asked John to run through the PastureBase data for the week.
Growth is above normal. Predicted growth is above normal. We're close to 70, Stuart, I suppose. The average farm cover figures are 240 per livestock unit on the dairy farms, and a farm cover well above 750. So what that basically says to you is that we are in surplus grass. And if you broke down the figures, 3 out of every 4 dairy farmers who are recording grass measurements are in surplus. And the average surplus is, if you want to say 200 is where we're supposed to be per livestock unit, the average figure for that group is 260, with a growth rate of over 70. While there are some farms swamped in grass, while there are those building grass, and then there are those who are feeding silage because they're short of grass. Stuart, you and I are based out of Fermoy, so whether it's South Tipperary, whether it's around Fermoy, Mitchelstown, whether it's across into Waterford, parts of Wexford, they are really struggling to grow grass, and the soil moisture deficit has returned. And with the forecast of low rainfall for the week, there's trouble brewing for some farms, albeit only a small proportion of the farms, but there is some trouble brewing. And the growth rates are going to be lower than they should be. They should be in 60-65 mark. It's not unusual for me to bump into farms doing 30 or 40 kilograms of growth. And it's not unusual for me to bump into farms doing, in excess of 80 of growth. So it's a case of anything goes, but it's about dealing with what you have in front of you with the target of the 1st of September in mind of trying to build grass. So, there are those who are trying to hold cover, there are those who have too much cover, and there are those who are trying to build cover. I suppose that's the quick, a third sort of it. You want to do it very, very quickly.
Okay, so John, I suppose we better deal with the majority first, I suppose.
Yeah, so the majority of surplus grass, I suppose, to have a farm covered at 800 at this stage, that's where for a lot of farmers should be on the 1st of September, who are stocked at, 2.5 cows, 2.6, 2.7 cows per hectare. What I'm doing there is multiplying the stocking rate by, 300. So if I said 2.5 cows per hectare by 300 per livestock unit, that's 750. So a lot of farmers, on the 7th of August are already where they're supposed to be on the 1st of September. And then feeding 4 kilos of meal, and you're scratching your head going here, and then they tell you that they're tired of making bales, and I'm going, good God, have we forgotten where we were in the spring of 2024, and crying out for some farms crying out for silage, a lot of farmers crying out for a quality bale or quality silage. So if there are 3 or 4 paddocks that are wrong, in quality, there's a great chance to take those out as surplus. Our feature farmer this week is Conlahan. Now Con is in Macroom farms on the heavier land. I don't deny that. 2 paddocks coming out and more to come, and his target for the 1st of September would be about 850 at a stocking rate closer to 3, I suppose. But he doesn't want to build covers as high, but and down on a kilo or 2 a meal. So you get where I'm going here. So those who are really in surplus have a great chance to put surplus bales into the system, a reserve in a year that has gone well for many in terms of grass production, especially, the northern half. Put quality silage reserve in place, and, spend the money on it when there is, a bit of cash around. And, that famous saying of old hay is old gold and it never goes astray. So there's a great chance to correct the farm in terms of grass quality if there's issues, and still be able to build at the same time towards the 1st of September. I suppose the next bunch then, I suppose, are somewhere about 200 per livestock unit or 180, and they have a level of surplus and they're building, and I'm okay with that. they're growing about 67, eating about 55. That's a swing of growth, somewhere over 10 a day. If I do 10 a day in growth of surplus over demand, and I do 20 days, that's adding 200. So if the average farm cover is around 650, then we're 850, 900 on the 1st of September. So I think that's a case of,
we should be where we should be. And
exactly,
I'll just go back to your comment there, John, about the people not wanting to take out the bales. I have a phrase that I got from a farmer in County Limerick when I was working in that area. If there's a summer to make it, there'll be a winter to eat it. Yes. Or ate it is exactly how he said it, a winter to eat it. If there's a summer to make it, there'll be a winter to eat it. And people should remember that. I think it's very important. I know you definitely get very irate by that comment of people saying, I'm sick of making bales. And we can understand that people would be, but in reality, this is a great year. We should be taking advantage of it.
Completely.
There's advantages in terms of, the silage costs money to make and so forth, but there's potential big tax bills going to come out of this year, so this is all a cost that can be written off.
Well, it's straightforward to me. If you there was no surpluses made, really, we're talking about from most farms last year. This year is different. We're up in grass production on average on PastureBase. I admit that, not for the southern coast, but or coastal counties, but for the most of the country, where grass growth has been a phenomenal year, phenomenal spring, and there's a chance to put surplus and high quality silage in place. Why wouldn't you do it? I suppose our last grouping, which is a small proportion, I said a third, that's probably generous, but they are a sizable grouping because there's a lot of cows in South Tipperary, Cork, and not so much West Cork now, but we'll say North Cork, East Cork, Waterford and parts of Wexford, and South Kilkenny. I suppose I could throw into it as well, maybe, but they are tight on grass supply, especially if you're highly stocked. So the first objective is to hold rotation, do not shorten up, and to hold the farm cover and somewhere anywhere close to 600. So when the opportunity does come, that you're in a place to start out of the blocks well in terms of recovery. So I drive by Curtin's farm almost every day, Stuart, and to see them feeding silage again. It's third time now, I think, if I'm correct, or our third drought, or approach of a drought anyway. It's difficult to reconcile that in your head, but we are where we are, and you must make things happen, I suppose, in terms of what's going to happen in August to build grass. I've had this conversation more than once with likes of Brendan Horn about this, and Brendan's targets would be somewhere about 1100 for the middle of September. If he gets to 9 at this stage, I'd say would be thrilled on that farm. So we've a long way to go still. It's 6 weeks, but anyway, you can't let the farm deplete and cover. You'll have to wait and see what way the weather forecast will come next week. But if we run down the farm cover, it's too hard to build it back up, especially when time is against you. Because once we get to middle of September, generally, demand of the herd generally outstrips grass supply, generally.
Yeah, and John, there's two questions there. I suppose the first is there an opportunity that there'll be compensatory growth as such when the weather comes, and give us a guideline? I'll put the two of them to you and you can take them in whichever order you want. Compensatory growth when the weather comes right, because we did get a share of that last year, and people
100%, yeah, absolutely,
yeah. And I know hope isn't a strategy, but people will be hoping that might work out for them to a certain extent. And then what's the when you say not to run down the farm, what's the lowest pre-grazing cover people should be going to, basically, before they should be reacting before that, but when do they know they're in dangerous territory in terms of running down the farm?
Yeah, I suppose some people might be just a little bit underestimating covers, because the dry matters are coming back at high now, whether it's Grange or Moore Park. We were in the 20
above 20 with the last couple of weeks.
Yes, we are, and the wind there that blows at times makes things dry. But just to say that, right, bounce, absolutely, Stuart. Soil temperatures are above normal, well above normal. So when the rain comes, then the bugs start working. There's a sudden release of nitrogen from the soil as the bugs work into the organic matter. You get the highest release of nitrogen in the months of August, September. So there will be a bounce. And we've seen that before, and it happened last year as well, and happened in years gone by. It's only when that rain comes to give you that bounce, Stuart. But there will be a bounce, yes, which does help. But I suppose for those who are trying to build cover, you have to make things happen, particularly if you're highly stocked. if you're 2.5 cows per hectare, Stuart, chances are, with any sort of reasonable growth rates, you'll get a long way towards those targets that we outlined. But if you're well above 3, to me, you have to make things happen, and those things involve things like, removing the calves and replacements off the platform, maybe removing some of the culls. That's particularly applicable if you want to be below 210 organic for the year, which I will argue for. I'm sure you're the same. People will say, "Oh, sure, I'll feed more meal, John," and that does help. But if I go from 2 kilos of meal to 4 kilos of meal, I will not get 2 kilos of grass back. But if I feed 2 kilos of silage, which people don't like doing, but you will get 2 kilos of grass back. Now, there's other ways of doing it. If you have reseeded ground come back in, that increases supply of grass. Silage ground can increase if it comes back in onto the platform. That will increase supply of grass. And if you decide that you can walk the road a bit to get to additional lands, well, that will increase the supply of grass as well. And the last one then is the nitrogen piece, which is linked to your bounce and growth. Now, we all have to be careful about how much nitrogen we're allowed and how much we've left, but nitrogen is a significant factor. And I'll just summarize this very, very quickly. It's just short, like fertilizer applied in August is going to be a better response than fertilizer applied in September. So we'll say no more. I think we all know that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so basically divide up what you left to the 15th of September, and you should be putting on more of that in August than you are in September.
So what we've said in the newsletter this week, today is the 7th or 8th of August. If we apply 1 unit a day, 30 unit, we should be on a 30-day round by early September.
Yeah.
You see them doing here?
Yeah.
You're thereabouts. I would love the collecting yard tank to be empty around the middle of August and full in the middle of September.
Yes.
That'd be my wish. For what it is, I know people say it's water, or watery, but for what it is, it punches way above its weight now, right? If you test it, you get so much N, P, and K that it won't set the records in terms of nitrogen, P's, and K's in it, but because the nitrogen's in what I would call an organic and liquid portion, that it delivers more than what it should. That's the way I'll put it. Yeah, that's okay.
And John, then just from the nutrient point of view there, when you do mention the dirty water tanks, we'll say, and obviously there's substantial enough quantities of that generated on farms. There's a bit of a balancing act here, maybe, but would it be like the vast majority? And if they haven't it done already, people should have their slurry tanks empty now at this stage. Should they bank up a little bit of it? I
suppose the first thing, I'm the one claiming there to make the surplus grass into bales. I better cover this off. Every 4 bales to the acre is 1,000 gallons of slurry in terms of P and K leaving the field or the paddock.
Probably closer to 2,000 to the dairy washings then, or more.
Oh, at least, yeah. Or if you don't have the slurry, then the bag of 0730 would cover most of the P and K for 4 bales to the acre.
Again, if you have the P allowance,
so look. To me, the slurry should go back to the silage ground after the second cut, or if there's a third cut. If you read Con's piece in the newsletter, you'll see that he's making a third cut. He has 8.5 ton of silage per livestock unit in place. Wouldn't have made much of a reserve last year now for obvious reasons. Mm-hmm. He's making a third cut. This will get him to 10 ton. That's his story. So 8.5 ton will cover him from the 1st of November to the 1st of April. But on a heavy soils farm, like grazing after 1st November is bonus territory. Generally, if the spring is reasonable, there's some grazing in March. Any grazing in February is rare. The point I'm making is that he's taking the chance to put a third cut in place, to put a reserve in place. And I think we should be thinking that way. And that's where the slurry should go, Stuart. The slurry has to prioritise towards the silage ground, I suppose, or the paddocks that are low in index, and they're not the ones around the yard, as we all know. They're the ones further away from the collecting yard and the parlour. Yeah. So, I suppose I better do my broadcast for K here, if that's all right.
Yeah, but I suppose, John, just before you do go on to the K, because I was just going to ask you about it anyway, but what are you seeing in terms of the people that you're dealing with in terms of the management of the soil water? Do they keep spreading it away the whole time, or are they inclined to put some of it maybe into some of the slurry tanks for the next couple of weeks and then use it from the 15th of September on, and we'll say that by the end of October they'll have the surplus that they'd stored gone before they start into the slurry storage period. They'll have those tanks emptied out again for slurry, and then they spread away their dairy wash tank at that stage regularly to keep it in hand, we'll say.
Yeah, I suppose, Stuart, you see all three. If you have your own tanker, you're inclined to chip away. if you're doing it by contractor, they tend to get a bunch of it together, and they will add some of the collecting yard to the slurry tanks. Yeah, that does happen. And then there are those who are astute about it and will start saving it up for, middle of September on. You'll see all sorts. I think the most important thing is that it's used wisely. That's probably the most important thing.
Yeah.
If you're tight on nitrogen allowance, that should go to the clover paddocks. If there's parts of, I was in West Cork yesterday, so you have a lot of undulating land and the cows lie at the bottom of the hill or the top of the hill, so anyway, I'm going to argue that the fertilizer shouldn't go to those places because there's lots of build up of dung pads there anyway, and the collecting yard is another valuable source of nutrient that can be used wisely, if that's okay to say, whether it's after silage, after bales, clover paddocks. Maybe you apply it to parts of the farm that are lower in index. So it's just a matter of using it wisely. Not to me, does it make sense to put soiled water on a part of the farm where all the cows camp? No, it doesn't. To me, it doesn't.
So then on the K side, John, it's K is a funny kind of people can be very nervous of using it, and yet we need it, and we need it in large quantities.
Yeah, and we need to apply it really in the second half of the year or in the first half of the year.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the way it is, and people get nervous about it. However, PastureBase is on target to do 13 tons. I don't know what will happen into the autumn, but we were ahead of average on the 1st of July. If that's the case, we need somewhere in 30-35 units just to balance the books in terms of growing that quantity of grass. So I admit if you got 1,000 gallons of slurry in the spring, in terms of K, your job is done. But if the platform got no slurry, and you did maybe 3 rounds of something like 29-0-14 applied at 20 units of nitrogen, then you're thereabouts as well, Stuart. But if you've done nothing in terms of K, I suggested August and September, the 2 months to do it, not October, November. And I would suggest, especially the year that's in it with spare money around, that everyone should have a pallet or two of 0.50 or sulfate of potash, whichever you want, inside in the yard. It has no nitrogen in it, has no P. When we look at the soil results, the K status and the P status are the same, yet there's no restrictions on K in terms of application date or application quantity. Yet, 40% of soils are deficient in K, I suppose, Stuart, around the country. Thereabouts. And applying a half bag of muriate of potash, not 50, you're more or less covering your K requirements for the year for growing 12-13 tons of grass.
But that's only the maintenance piece, that, John, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah.
So unless we have index 3, we actually need to be looking at adding more than that, Yeah,
agreed. So if we have maintenance covered and applied one bag, not 50, and you can split it if you want, half bag now, half bag in early September, right? If you apply one bag, which is 50 unit, it brings you from index 2 to index 3.
Mm-hmm.
That's what one bag will do. One bag of muriate of potash, right? It allows the average soil in the country to rise in index. I admit if you're a heavier soil, you're probably closer to 60 or 70 units. But anyway, in principle, 50 units of K applied per acre, once the maintenance is covered, you're going to rise in index.
It's a case of digging out the soil maps that people would have got with irrigation plans and with fertilizer plans that more and more people got this year now in light of the restrictions around nitrogen and so forth.
The notorious paddocks were the silage paddocks, the paddocks cut for bales, the paddocks furthest away from the yard. You know the story. If the slurry has a history of going close to the yard, which on most farms it does over time, then they're rarely deficient in K, but the further you go away from the yard, they tend to be more deficient in K. People talk about growing grass in response to nitrogen. Having soil indexes at index 3 or 4 for K is going to give you a better response to nitrogen and grow more grass in the year than index 1 or 2. So that's the reality of it.
And without a doubt, again, like William has said this to me before, he would have been kind of one of the people pushing the 29-0-14 there for the last few years as well, in terms of trying to achieve that maintenance cover that you're talking about, as well as the additional K. Like that K can't be underestimated in terms of how much it's helping to, I won't say circumvent, but definitely reduce the impact of the dry spells. Like it's definitely slowing the impact of them and hastening the recovery, isn't it?
100%. It allows you to grow a little bit more into the drought, and allows you to come a little bit faster out of the drought. There's no doubt about that. There's work from New Zealand on that. There's work done by others here on that, in Teagasc, But and look, the farmers would tell themselves they would see that,
Yeah. So I suppose, John, just like you've mentioned, Con there already. Like Con is on a difficult enough soil there, just outside of Macroom. Was one of the heavy soils farmers with the last number of years, obviously, as well, and has done plenty of effort in terms of drainage and access and so forth. And you said that he doesn't go out much in February, but he does go out if he gets the opportunity.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But it's harder on heavy soils.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But just, I suppose, what's Con's thinking in terms of building that cover? Like, so if he's inclined to say, I'm not going to be able to graze in November, I'm not going to be able to graze in February, why is he thinking about building cover? Like, that's the challenge that is probably thrown at us all the time. Why will I build it if I'm not going to be able to graze it?
Two things I'll say before we get into that, Stuart. One, you mentioned already about, having the grazing infrastructure to graze, right? Building grass, for me, it puts more grass in a diet. Building grass will grow more grass for you. We have provisional estimates of 20% extra in September. It's keeping the cows out longer, higher milk protein, less silage fed. You know all those things. The numbers are about €2 per cow per day profit for every day at grass if you can. So that's one piece of the jigsaw. The other piece is that Con is also reseeding at the moment. He's done a bit already, and he's taking the opportunity to do more now. He's had paddocks out for surplus, but he's also able to reseed as well because of the growth rates. Like, he's grown, somewhere probably will grow north of 60 this week, and yet has demand in the 50s. So you'll understand then there's an opportunity there. But saying that, he, all the lads in the heavy soils program, they don't like grazing covers, I suppose, beyond 2,000 kilos. They get very, very nervous very, very quickly. Would they manage for a week in a dry field if the cover was built on a paddock cut for bales because it'll hold its quality? They will. But, the maximum cover Con will want on the 1st of September will be about 850. If he gets to 900 by middle of September, that means he's grazing roughly 16, 17, 1800s. He doesn't want to go beyond that. And all his colleagues would be very, very similar. While they're good to graze grass, they have to get in, get off, and clean off fairly quickly without having to run the risk of trying to graze big covers in a small area with bad weather. It's difficult, and it does damage to the land. It does damage to the recovery of grass as well. So it's a balancing act, and if the lads get anywhere close to the end of October to 1st November on average, they're thrilled. I admit last year they got longer, but that's not the norm, So something else you asked me, I meant to say earlier, sorry, Stuart, was the limits on how far you go for those who are tight on grass. I don't want to go below a farm cover of 550, Stuart, and don't want to be grazing below a cover of 1100. To be honest with you, they're all the triggers for me, and you must hold 20-day rotation. If you're tight on grass, they're the three things. So 550 average farm cover, not grazing anything less than 1100, and holding the rotation at 20-21 days. When we talk about rotation length in the autumn, it's not so much looking back, it's about the proportion of the farm graze. So if you want to be on 30 days on early September, you have 90 acres, therefore you should be grazing 3 acres a day. If you're grazing 4, you're on a 25-day round and you're going too fast. If you're grazing 2 acres, then, a day, then you're going too slow and the surplus is building too fast. So it's proportion of farm graze when we talk about rotation length, not looking back in days really as such.
And John, just, you're good in terms of doing this on the week basis, we'll say. So just describe, and for like the rotation length, we've talked amongst ourselves about it as well. Rotation length is the number that everybody can do, basically. So like, we don't have everybody measuring grass, unfortunately, but people can relate to the number of days. So we're talking about building from 20 days on the 1st of August to the 30 days, as you said there, the 1st of September.
They're thereabouts, yeah. Early September, I'd say, yeah.
How do you describe that now for somebody that's, we'll say, new to the game and they're wondering what are they going to do? Are you saying that, we'll say, take the 100 acres for ease now and the 20-day round, they should be grazing the 5 acres a day? Are you saying that they gradually reduce that over the 2 weeks to the middle of the month? Or are you saying after the first week is gone, you cut back basically, and you're grazing the 22.5% of the farm as such, kind of. And then you're going to the 25-day round, the 22.5%. Now I'll throw people out, 22.5 day round, and then going to 25-day round then subsequently. Like, you're doing it in a step rather than daily changing the allocation. You're going with 3 acres a day for two weeks, and then after 2 weeks you're going to the 2.5 acres a day, going to 2 acres a day, whatever. Like, is that the best way for people to implement that? And
it depends a little bit how it depends a little bit how you're set up. So we mentioned about having paddocks clean, right? So by the time you get, we'll talk about grazing 1,300 at the moment, Stuart, but by the time you get to the 1st September, you should be grazing 1,500-1,600. That's what you should be doing of what we call clean grass, because the reproductive stage is over. It should be all leafy. If you've done your job well and cleaned it off, then this stuff will remain leafy and the cows graze it quite easily. So for some, then it's creeping away as you go, step by step. I admit the first 2 weeks in August, not much happens. It tends to happen towards the latter end of August. It's not as if it goes incremental week by week. It tends to happen a little bit later as we go towards the 1st September, and the covers start to build. And your growth versus demand story is working in your favor. So, for example, you're growing 65, 70 and eating 50, 55. So there's a nice swing in cover by about 100 a week. So, or about 10 or 15 a day. So that's one part of the jigsaw. The next part of the jigsaw, let's say you cut your silage late July, early August. That's going to come back in then, late August, early September, and that's your injection then. And then by the time you arrive back to the grazing ground, you have jumped from the, early 20s into close to 30 days. That's the injection of grass into the system. For some, then they don't have silage ground, and it's reseeds coming back in, or the calves and replacements leaving. And that brings in extra land, and it puts in an extra paddock or two, and puts more grass into the system. For others, then they have to actually kind of make it happen. Particularly if you're 3.5 cows per hectare and you just keep going, it's going to be hard to build grass without doing some sort of management change, right? Which is either you achieve higher growths with addition of fertilizer, or the growth is better than expected. That's the hope strategy, and that's a risky one. Then you're into other things like, well, do I take out some of the notting calf cows or the cull cows out of the system? Do I introduce more feed? Right? For some that can be meal, for some it can be silage, for some it can be zero graze grass. Whatever it is that injects more feed into the system, thereby reducing demand and letting the farm build. So there's no one silver bullet here, or no one farm the same, but we just need to be gaining in pre-grazing yield and gaining in rotational length and gaining in grass supply on the farm. I suppose that's the way to describe it, Stuart, yeah.
And John, this is probably one of the biggest challenges that we have, is trying to get people to take action there. I think you described it as earlier.
Make things happen,
make things happen, yeah. So, is that rotation linked piece something that people could look at, that if they do, and you said in the high stock situations, there's a piece of every pie maybe needs to be eaten in this scenario, so, like you said, the cull that's definitely going and she's dodgy, let her off. She's not contributing a huge amount here from a milk point of view at this stage if she's got some problems and whatever.
She could also put you on the wrong side of the organic numbers in terms of stock and we saw that last year quite a lot now.
But I suppose the angle I'm getting at is people often don't react because they don't feel they don't feel the need. So if you give 2.5 acres to the herd of cows,
yes, I was going to give you a simple plan. Today is the 7th of August. If we go to the 7th of September and we're supposed to 30 days, Stuart, right?
Yeah.
You could say, and you have 90 acres. You go 3 acres a day, and if you're going any faster, you fill the gap.
Yeah, and that's the angle that I'm coming at, John. I think is that.
I probably wouldn't do that just yet, but as you get towards the middle of August, 20th of August, if things are not moving, you have to make it move.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm just kind of, I suppose the angle that or the point I'm trying to make, John, is maybe that if people start tightening up the cows, and then they might actually see straight in front of them, God, they're going to be tight here. Yep. That they need to get something else then at that point of view, whereas And maybe if the growth rate continues, maybe the extra kilo a meal or two might do the trick in the short term for the next couple of weeks.
It might, yeah.
But there will come a point in the high stock situations where it won't, more than likely.
Agreed. Now, look, I suppose I'll use the term make things happen. I'll use another term, heads up, right? August is a holiday month for many people. They relax, the breeding season's over, the silage is made, they throw their feet up. I have a Limerick farmer in my mind saying, well, John, we can throw the feet up now for the rest of the year. And I'm going, good God. He won't mind if I call him Ian, but anyway, and he'll give out to me for saying this, but you kind of have to keep your head in the game. And if we go back, I suppose I'll do a small bit of hope here, Stuart, for a minute. If I was to look at the PastureBase Ireland figures for the last number of years, you'll find September is either the highest growth month or the second highest growth month over the last number of years. For whatever reasons, there are those that are climatic or weather related. There are also those, the fact that the cover is higher and grass grows grass. That's the principle that people like me will be after.
And then you have that nutrient release that you're talking about as well.
Correct. You have all those factors come with you. But, if your head is up and watching what's happening, you can make use of that. But what you don't want to do is drift into early September and the kids are back to school. Now we'll look towards grass towards the autumn. The game could be gone from you. And that's the fear that we have. And I suppose, Stuart, people like us have access to PastureBase Ireland's figures there for the last number of years. And you look at where things are won and lost. And if you're to pick the greatest thorn in our side of looking at PastureBase figures of where things are won and lost, the proportion of farms that trying to reach the targets for grass in early September is not where it should be by a long, long way. And I suppose, we'll have people giving out to us, why isn't this happening, John? And, and it's symptomatic of,
yeah, the first half of the year is the busy part of the year.
Yeah, well, you have breeding, silage, grassland, all those things going on. And then we get into August and we relaxed. And I understand we all have to take, a break from the thing too. But unfortunately, the way the grass grows, once you get to middle of September, you're generally going to be eating more than you're growing. The thing that's often forgotten, some of the highest intakes ever recorded in Moore Park are in the month of September by the animals.
You use a lot of grass then.
They do. You have a change in the grass structure. You have you're heading into autumn. The plant works to day length. While it looks leafy and green, sometimes the animals consume more because it responds to day length, and the energy value is just never the highest at that time of year compared to, say, spring grass. Yeah. So the animals are getting heavier too. You have all these different things going on, and before you know it, you can be, not where you want to be in terms of grass supply by the middle of September.
Yeah, I suppose we'll wrap it up with this then, John. But that actually has consequences then for February of next year in a lot of cases.
It does.
Doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I'll say these are the targets for September. 1st of October, closing cover on the 1st of December. And what generally happens then is, if you don't have enough grass built up in October, you tend to start running down things fast. And then some farmer will say to you, but sure, John, I'll meet my targets the 1st of December. I'll go in on the 1st of November. And you go, oh, yeah, okay.
I'll believe it when I see it.
That could work. And it could. If you did 10 days, if you did 10 kilos of growth for November at 30 days, it puts 300 onto your cover. If you have the farm shaved out by the end of October, you could get close to 700. I don't deny that. But that's not what happens. Reality is the weather's good in the first week of November. Now we go. And then we missed the 1st of December, and then by default we missed both the grass supply on the 1st of February, and then we end up in the month of March like we did. I admit it didn't happen in 24, but in 25, you arrive out the farm in the middle of March, farm cover is low, weather is fabulous, we don't have the grass supply on the farm.
So it all starts here basically?
I would argue that. There's a famous saying in this game that, the grazing season starts in the autumn, not in the spring.
Yeah, perfect, John. Thanks very much.
All right, best luck.
That's all for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast and the Grass10 Grazing Management update on the Dairy Edge. My thanks to John Maher for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie or email us on our dedicated email address, dairyedge.podcast@teagasc.ie. I'm Stuart Childs, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.